Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Daily Signal's Top 10, where we're going to focus on Thanksgiving and talk about the top 10 things, or at least 10 things you might not know about one of our favorite holidays. I am Genevieve Wood, and here with me to talk about all of this are my colleagues here at Heritage, senior contributor to the Daily Signal, Jared Stepman, and our commentary editor, Daniel Davis. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thanks for having us. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
So let's get started. Number 10 in our top 10 here is talking about the commercialization of the holidays and the fact that some people think we kind of skip over Thanksgiving. We go straight from Halloween candy to all of a sudden everything's green and red. Do you guys agree with that, or do you think Thanksgiving still gets celebrated well?
I think the advertisers have definitely been shrewd at using Thanksgiving to get people geared up for Black Friday. And once you're on Black Friday, you're thinking about Christmas. So it's like skipping over the entire thing. So I could definitely use a bit slower transition, especially given that Thanksgiving is such a uniquely American holiday.
Yeah, that's what I really love about Thanksgiving. I do get a little bitter that it gets kind of shafted over between Halloween, between Christmas. And I have to say, this actually tradition of commercializing Thanksgiving actually started in the 1940s under FDR, when he switched Thanksgiving to be earlier so that, well, people go buy stuff. Right, so we could commercialize it. So, you know, I don't like that. And, well,
it's part of the New Deal, stimulus.
Right, to stimulate things, to stimulate things. So I don't like the commercialization. I'm a big fan of Thanksgiving as it is.
But, you know, I mean, a lot of people say the kind of period between Thanksgiving to Christmas, it's just one big extended holiday. It's not all about Christmas. It's not kind of all blended in together. It's all about family.
It's a season.
Thanksgiving, to a certain extent. And you were talking about, Jared, it's a uniquely American holiday. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But it is something you've seen many cultures throughout history have some sort of Thanksgiving-type celebration.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the Pilgrims who celebrate this got a lot of these traditions from the Jews and other cultures. This is not something that started even in the last 400 years. This goes back millennium. So this is something that's traditional throughout cultures, and certainly we've picked it up in this country in a very big way and made it this very Americanized holiday, which is a wonderful thing, which is a great thing. And I think that the message of the day of giving thanks one day a year, should be more days a year, but having this day set aside to give thanks is a very good thing for our culture, for who we are. So, you know, it makes me sad to see it a little bit commercialized, but you know, that's kind of part of the holiday. So, well,
let's get into the history of it and talk about, and this is our number 9 story, Thanksgiving at Plymouth. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate about it. You know, was the first Thanksgiving really the way we celebrate it today? I think most people go, no, it probably wasn't. And there's questions about exactly who all was there. But there does seem to be a clear indication. 1621, I believe, was our first Thanksgiving, so-called officially.
It's remarkable, 150 so years before the Declaration of Independence. I mean, it just gives you a sense of how long there was an American history before we were actually a nation. But yeah, yes, no, there was no gravy, no cranberry sauce, that kind of stuff. But they did have like wild turkeys, right? And there was a meal, and they were giving thanks. I think that's the main thing to remember, is that they had a meal and they gave thanks to God for their, they were Puritans, and they came here for religious freedom, so that's part of our uniquely American story.
One thing, Jared, I mean, like so many American traditions and historical stories these days, people try to rewrite them, right? Now, none of us were clearly there, so we don't know exactly what went down and exactly who all was at the dinner table together, but separate maybe some fact from fiction in terms of what people trying to rewrite it today, where they may be getting it wrong.
Well, sure. I mean, there are a few things. I mean, it wasn't the very first Thanksgiving. There actually had been Thanksgivings in America by the Spanish. There had been some in the Virginia colonies. And to a certain extent, this is basically anybody who got here and was still alive was very thankful. Very much so. Reality, very much, especially if you know what the Pilgrims had endured at that time, and which was absolutely incredible. Their first year, there was so much death and starvation. You know, they were giving thanks to the fact that now they have a bumper crop, now they actually have food to feed themselves, now they have something that they can celebrate. You know, this holiday kind of became a big thing as the efforts of a lot of Americans that turned what was initially a New England holiday for the Pilgrims turned into a national holiday. This great speech by Daniel Webster in the 1820s celebrating the anniversary and made this kind of a national holiday. We should celebrate these people who came. These are our forefathers. So it kind of spread throughout the country and became, became the mythical today Thanksgiving that Americans celebrate as a country. At one time, it was a very localized thing, and there were different traditions through different parts of the country. Now it's kind of been unified into kind of a single tradition that now millions of Americans take part in today.
Yeah, of course, we know that those who came over on the Mayflower, there were about 100 and some odd, I think, who originally decided to come over. But by the time this event took place, being this first Thanksgiving, there were probably only 50 maybe left from that trip. Those who died on the trip, those who died the first very harsh winter that many of them were here. But let's talk about, where do our Thanksgiving traditions that came from that very small group, kind of where do they come from now? So this is our story number 8. We were getting into the fact that this was a very localized holiday, began to spread across the country. Abraham Lincoln was the one who first said, we're going to make this a national holiday.
Yep, and of course during the Civil War it would make sense that you would want to unify the nation after such a divisive period. So giving thanks that the nation came through such a horrific period with all the death, sort of reminiscent of the Mayflower. You know, there's a lot of death, but we've come through this as a nation, as a people, and we want to be unified. And so that's, as Jared noted, before Thanksgiving, before the Civil War, it was kind of seen as a northeastern kind of northern holiday. But with Lincoln, you know, we see it moving further across the country.
You know, one thing, Jared, even before Lincoln, I should have brought this up first. George Washington had declared this proclamation, right? And you know, going back to the very beginning of time, there's always a controversy in American politics, and they accused him of violating church versus state because he called for this proclamation and day of prayer.
That's right. Well, it was very early on in our country's history, so there's a little confusion as far as what the president can do with executive. So this should be a state thing instead.
Right.
Maybe you have state, and they do have state proclamations of giving thanks and whatnot. The actual message that Washington gave was a little less controversial. It definitely is something I suggest reading because it's very beautifully written, the way that Washington had it. But it really then eventually developed into the national holiday that we expect today under Lincoln. After years of campaign, there were people who wanted this to become a national holiday. It really wasn't for a long time. It did in 1863, and the tradition really stuck. And then so through the 19th century, this became a national tradition for all Americans.
Well, so we were just talking about number 7, which was Washington's call for the national Thanksgiving and how that ignited some controversy. We talked earlier than later about, okay, so yes, Lincoln brought it on, and then of course FDR made a few changes over the years on what days we're going to have Thanksgiving. But let's talk now about story number 6, which also involves presidents, and that's the presidential turkey pardons. And where this came, when you put president and turkey in the same, it just kind of goes together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about President Trump, so don't anybody out there say that. But there have been a few in the past. I'm sure some of you would agree with me. So Daniel, where did this whole idea of pardoning a turkey come from? Do we really know?
Well, it started, you know, President George H.W. Bush was the one who started with regularity pardoning 1 or 2 turkeys a year. And just kind of a funny thing, a light moment to enjoy. I'm looking forward to with President Trump. It's going to be great. That pardoning a turkey. What is great about this is the turkey goes to a farm for retirement, which I don't know what turkey retirement looks like, but I wonder if there is a government-funded pension that the turkey is living off of.
Well, there is a National Turkey Federation, I understand, so I'm sure they're lobbying for that if it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So Jarrett might have more details on the actual history behind before.
Well, so let's bring in number 5 for this and talk about Benjamin Franklin because he also liked the turkey, and he actually, there's some questions whether or not he would prefer to have the turkey as our national bird versus the bald eagle.
That's right. Actually, this comes from a letter he sent to his daughter that he learned that the bald eagle become the national bird and the symbol, and he was a little upset by this. He said, well, that the bald eagle tends to steal things and whatnot, but we need to have some noble animal like the venerated turkey to be. I think he was half joking. With Franklin, there was always a little bit of sarcasm and joking. He said, "Well, the turkey's a very brave animal. He'll stand his ground, and we want to be good Americans standing our ground." So that kind of like took off now. So of course there are a lot of turkeys in the United States. I think it's very much.
Well, he said it was a very American bird,
and it is a very American bird.
I guess the bald eagle's not an American bird. I don't know.
Who knows what Franklin really meant by that? But the turkey was a very noble bird, and certainly it's fed Americans for a very long time. Yeah. So I think we're quite thankful for the turkey. Maybe not the best idea to make it the national bird.
Not the best to put on the presidential seal, the turkey with the arrows. And
okay, so before we got started here today, we were talking about the fact that the average turkey weighs 15 pounds that people, I guess, serve up. Do you know which state eats the most turkey on Thanksgiving Day?
I don't.
No, you should know.
Is it California?
It's California. This is his home state.
Well, it makes sense. We got a lot of people in California.
Yeah, well, you do. We eat a lot of turkey, apparently. All right, we're going to move off turkeys and on to something also which is very American, and that is football. Now, of course, there's been a lot of controversy with the NFL this year. So the question is this still going to remain a staple of the American tradition on Thanksgiving of watching football? What would you all predict? You think the games are going to get high numbers this year?
I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a little more tension at dinner tables this year than there used to be. I mean, it used to be something that, look, people like to tune into the Lions game or the Cowboys game that they see every year. I think, unfortunately, and look, there have been a lot of stories about the dinner table becoming more fraught with politics now than there used to be. There have been stories about how people who have politically divided families have shorter Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I mean, I think, unfortunately, it's a crazy thing, but unfortunately now football is a controversial issue in this country, so, maybe it won't be so uniting, and it'll be kind of sad because, I have such good memories growing up of, watching the Lions game, watch the Lions get crushed before dinner started, and that was a great part of tradition. I remember my trips with my dad watching these games, so I definitely liked this tradition of football. I think it gets a little oversaturated. We have a few too many games, but I do like the tradition. Unfortunately, with a lot of our traditions, they're starting to fall apart as the country is very much divided.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the numbers go down a little bit just because they've been down overall all year. But I will certainly be watching my Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So I hope to see. Jerry Jones, I think, has sort of put his flag in the ground, no pun intended, that, we're going to respect the flag. So I will certainly be watching closely to see what happens.
Yeah. It will be, I was looking at the list of games for you football fans out there. And, the reality is these games are, we'll see what the ratings turn out to be. I don't think the matchups this year is near as good as they were last year, and many of the teams playing aren't as good as they were last year. So therefore, the ratings may not have been as good as we thought. All right, let's go to number 3, and that's the modernization of the holiday. And what we mean by that is people changing it kind of from things like Thanksgiving to Friendsgiving, which you can see here. But it's one of those holidays, not everybody gets off like a week. Most people don't. Many people live further away from their families, so it's an extremely, as many of you know, extremely expensive time of year to fly. I think even more expensive than Christmas. So people are choosing to kind of sometimes maybe not make it so family-oriented.
Yeah, I honestly, I have to say, I don't mind this change. I mean, I sometimes do gatherings with my friends before I gather with my family. I mean, I definitely think that people should use this time to give thanks with their family and have that tradition. But I don't really mind, look, if you get together with your friends, you want to have a big celebration, you want to do something, I think that's great. I mean, it's a time. Look, the original Pilgrims had a 3-day celebration for their Thanksgiving. In many ways, the tradition itself has morphed over time. We've added pumpkin pie. We've added these other things. I don't think this is a terrible thing. As long as it stays within the spirit of the original holiday, I'm okay with that. Maybe some people get a little bitter about that, but it seems to be okay with me.
Yeah, I think that's part of the way our traditions actually survive is that we adapt them to our changing circumstances. And that's, today, as you mentioned, Genevieve, that a lot of folks live further away from their parents. And so it makes sense to spend time with your friends. I would just want to make sure that, as you said, the spirit of it doesn't change and that we remember that we are giving thanks. And so like replacing the word thanks with friends, Friendsgiving, I would want to make sure that, we are remembering what this meal in time is about.
Yeah, no, good point. I like your point of the traditions evolving, and that keeps the holidays in many respects alive. That's good. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Thanksgiving traditions, and I'm going to ask our guys right here what some of theirs are. I was really hoping we'd have some pictures of like you guys when you were like 5 or something like that. Yeah. But Danielle, I'll start with you. What are some of the traditions at your house?
Well, obviously cowboys and meal and turkey. Usually it's in Texas, and we back when my grandparents were still around, we would my grandpa would say a prayer with the whole family gathered around, and we would all hold hands for that. He's passed, but I have some very fond memories of him doing that. He was a very special man, and I look forward to this year going to Tennessee rather than Texas because I have some other relatives there I haven't seen in a long time. But definitely the prayer and the meal together, and of course the Cowboys, and usually go outside and throw football with the cousins.
There you go.
You know, I think when I was younger, I have fond memories of drives with my dad going to my uncle's house, and we'd have a gathering there. My dad and I would listen to football in the morning. The rest of the family wasn't as interested, but we'd listen to football in the morning. As I said, listen to the Lions get slaughtered early in the morning before we go to our meal, which was always a lot of fun.
So sad.
But actually, in recent years, I've actually been going to my in-laws' house, and they have a great tradition I really like, that they go around the table. There aren't that many of us. So we go around the table and say, what are you thankful for? And we say the things that we've been thankful for in the last year. So we just have this moment to look back and say, you know, this last year I've had this happen to me, we've had this, and I'm very thankful for these things to happen. So I think that's part of the tradition, that's part of the holiday, and something that I really like doing. I like making part of my tradition. So I don't know. Maybe it's, you know, a lot of families do this kind of thing. It's good to have these moments of reflection. We live in a land of such incredible wealth and prosperity. Just take a moment out of your time to say, you know, we're really lucky to have these things. We're really blessed.
So none of you start the next day after Thanksgiving with the Black Friday and shopping and all that stuff?
I have actually.
Yeah, there you go.
I have done it, and I actually usually buying presents for my family, but sometimes get myself a sport coat or something because they're really cheap.
It'd be fun to hear for all of you watching. Share one of your favorite traditions, because I just think it's fun to share that kind of stuff. I mean, for ours, we do a lot of. We would literally plan our meals. This is sad, I know, but I'm from Texas. That's what you do. Plan your meal around what time the Dallas game is going to be. So either eat early or later, depending on if they're the early game or the late game. Hey, listen, you got to have priorities.
Right.
But it also is usually my mom's birthday, either on the day of Thanksgiving or within a day or two. So it's also a birthday celebration usually as well. So happy birthday. All right, let's go to our final. And this is the Macys Thanksgiving Day Parade, which is a big American tradition. Do you guys watch that every year?
I must admit,
no?
I can't say that I watch it. I mean, I think it's a nice thing. I think it's been going on since the 1920s. And it's a great tradition. I can't say I've ever been too interested in parades, so maybe Daniel's got a different take on this, but I was never that into parades. You know, military parades, yes, but Macys, what do you think, Daniel?
I find some of the giant contraptions that they have amusing and kind of interesting every year. It's something different, and it's cool to see which company produces the coolest and biggest and weirdest thing. But aside from that, you know, I don't watch too closely. It's mainly a time of fasting for that turkey later in the afternoon, and getting ready for football.
Unless, of course, one of the floats pops and deflates.
Yes.
Then it's very
then you
interesting.
watch the highlights.
Then you watch the highlights afterward with the excitement.
It's one of those things, and people, I mean, the older you are, probably the more you remember this parade, because I think there's a lot more competition now. It used to be, like, you know, there's 3 or 4 channels, and this was the only thing you saw. But it's also become so commercialized. I mean, every single float, every single musical act that performs is promoting some movie, some Broadway play, some new toy, something, right? It just seems a little less. It just seems kind of like one big commercial, and is also interrupted by a lot of commercials. But I remember my parents always loved it. I even loved it as a kid, the old black and white movie about the Macys Day Parade.
Oh,
you know, it started all around that, and Santa Claus and the whole Miracle on 31st
Yes, that was
Street.
it.
Miracle, the original. They've done remakes with the original,
and they talked about commercialization.
They did.
Or, as he pronounced it, commercialization.
Yes, that's right. and you had the Santa Claus who had a little too few many nips there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good movie.
Gonna watch that.
Take a look. Natalie Wood, and I forgot the other folks who were in it, but she plays the little girl in the movie. Yeah. All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you all and to your families.
Thanksgiving.
Very much.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We're very thankful for you and for your viewership and your support of the Daily Signal, and we look forward to celebrating not only this holiday, but then of course the coming Christmas season with you as well. Thanks everyone. We will see you back here next week, right here on the Daily Signals Facebook Live.